Hi, and welcome back to the Always Right podcast. I'm author Carissa DeLay,
And I'm author Jamie Vendera.
and we have a special guest with us today. We'd like to introduce you to podcast.
Right, it's Rachel Green Ward. Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, and I know Rachel's parents. Her mom was one of my kids' teachers and my husband's teacher, which is crazy. And then her dad was our optometrist for years. And then my husband's mother's cousin works for her dad now. So it's like this whole, 20 degrees of Kevin Bacon and connections across the world.
It kind of sounds like Spaceballs. You two are too young to remember that movie. It's a spoof of Star
No,
Wars.
I've seen it. I watched it when I was a kid.
Okay.
I really
You're
enjoyed
my
it because I love
father's
Star
cousin,
Wars. Yeah.
sister's brother's former roommate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So today, this is pretty awesome because we recently have released the episode on children's books. And through that, we have thought it would be nice to have someone on who is familiar with illustrating someone's words, someone who takes someone's vision with words and makes it into a visual aspect of writing. So therefore, we have invited Miss Rachel. And Rachel, would you like to tell us who you are and why we've invited you on here?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Rachel Green, and I'm originally from Jackson, Ohio, in Appalachia. And Carissa is also from Jackson, so that's how we know each other. And I'm a storyboard artist in the animation industry, which is kind of like making the blueprint for an animated film or a TV show. Like if the animators are going to animate a scene, they need a little bit of help because there's not much time for them to entirely interpret a script by themselves. So what a storyboard artist will do is they will take the script that the writers have given them and they'll kind of give the little pieces, almost like a comic book. Like let's say, the Let It Go sequence from Frozen. If Elsa's going to go up and make a snowman, the animators kind of want a blueprint of what that's going to look like. So the storyboard artist will kind of design a few panels of what that'll look like. And then the animator will take that from the storyboard artist and flesh it out, turn it into what you see on the screen.
Okay, so that is the storyboard artist kind of like the middleman between the author of the storyline and the visual animator?
Yes, that's a really good term that I've never thought of. But yeah, it's kind of the connection between the written word and the final animation on the screen. Yes.
I know this is off topic, but I didn't realize the need for this in a lot of industries. There is a woman that I am friends with here in Florida who is she's kind of the middleman for pilots and engineers. She has to understand being a pilot and she has to understand engineers to be able to communicate because a pilot doesn't know what an engineer wants and an engineer doesn't know what a pilot's saying. So she's the middleman.
Yeah.
She's like, I hang out with the pilots. I hear their conversation. I know how they talk. But then I also understand the engineering part. So then she's like, I can communicate and put it kind of in layman's terms for both parties. She's like, she has to have like flight hours and stuff. I'm like, that is crazy. You don't even think about that. Like you have two different worlds and you have to be able to like build that bridge. So that's you. You're basically a storyboard bridge builder.
Yeah, like a story builder. Yeah, that's kind of like how it is. But it's one of those things where the schedule doesn't allow a lot of time for the animators, especially, to be thinking super hard about what they're going to do and what the writers want, especially. So it is kind of like the middleman that makes it easier for them by, laying down the blueprint of the acting and the emotions and what's most important in a scene, so the animators don't have to work as hard.
I'm like my brain's kind of blown. I never even realized this was a thing. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious, like, where you went to college? Did you major in the story bridge builder? I'm like, how does one even find out about that?
Yeah, what is this route? Where did that go?
Yeah. So I went to the Columbus College of Art and Design in Columbus, Ohio. So kind of close to where I grew up, only like 2 hours away. Normally what people do is they major in animation. So that was my major. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in animation. And you kind of learn the whole animation pipeline, how everything works in the animation industry. And you kind of pick like a discipline, like a craft, like a focus. And so I chose storyboarding because I've always loved writing as a kid. And I kind of view storyboarding as kind of the marriage between illustration and writing, which I both love. And it was kind of like the perfect thing for me to choose because I got to do both.
Cool. That's cool. So when did you decide you wanted to do that? Was this something always as a child you wanted to go to art school? Was this something that you're like, you know what, maybe this is where I want to go? What was that epiphany? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think I've always kind of waffled back and forth between art teacher because my mom was a teacher, so it was kind of like, "Oh, I know what this is. This is something that I could do." But, whenever I was a kid, do you remember how like Disney would take out the VHS tapes from their vault or whatever?
Mhm. Yes.
My mom like bought like every single one of those when they came out. So it was kind of like I was indoctrinated as soon as I was born, like constantly watching these VHS tapes all the time. And I would, pause them on the TV to kind of study each frame. And sometimes I would take a piece of paper and trace the screen by
Wow.
putting it on there
Oh,
and like
that's
that. Yeah.
yeah.
It was a nice learning experience, honestly. And when I talked to other people who also went into animation, they're like, I did that too. It was just like a natural thing that we all did. But yeah, I think it was just being exposed to so many animated films as a kid. It was like, this is definitely what I want to
Mhm.
do. And, a lot of adults say, like, I didn't know what I wanted to do until I was like 18 or even like in my 20s or whatever. But I'm like, it feels so weird to know that I wanted to do this since I was like 5. But it was always waffling back and forth between art teacher and animation. And I was just like, I'm going to do it. I see that Columbus College of Art and Design has an animation program. I want to do it. I think it's possible. And then I didn't even know what storyboarding was until I was like a senior in high school. And I didn't choose that as a focus till I was like a junior. So it took
Right.
time, because I was studying a couple of different disciplines within animation, but storyboarding came most naturally to me because of the writing aspect. And
Mhm.
then it just worked.
Well, even with that said, I'm kind of curious about your artistic style because you mentioned Disney and watching these VHS tapes. So, what is your artistic style? What if I came to you and it was for something? How do you know how I'm trying to say this? What is like in your realm and what's out of your realm? There's got to be somebody who's wanted to hire you for a job. And you're like, well, that's not the type of storyboarding I do, or do you like, nah, I can do it all?
Yeah, that's very valid. So, if I'm gonna storyboard something, it's definitely more in the vein of like cartoony, Disney, cute, whimsical, fantasy type stuff. Like, I don't really think I could do something that was super actiony and detailed because it doesn't come naturally to me. I don't have that type of training with the shows that I've been on. Oftentimes, I would choose something that's more cute, cartoony, something you'd see on TV, like on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, or even like a Disney film.
So you could
Nothing
still
too
do
hyper detailed, yeah.
what's the Last Airbender? I mean, that
Is
would be
that
in your
Oh,
realm.
yeah,
studio?
Avatar: The Last Airbender. I mean, it's interesting because I haven't worked on any shows that are that action-based, but honestly, that show was so influential to me when I was in elementary school that I can see the influence in, like, the faces that I draw and stuff like that. So, honestly, yeah, I am influenced by The Last Airbender, but in terms of, like, the style of, like, it's an action show, they're constantly fighting, I don't normally do that type of work. I do more, like, dramatic stuff, like, dialogue scenes, emotion, or, straight up funny things. So that's the type of work I usually get hired for.
Now, I know that you had an internship with Cartoon Network, correct?
Yes.
And then you worked on a project. What project did you work on with them?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because when I was hired as an intern at Cartoon Network, it wasn't necessarily art based because a lot of these studios legally can't make students draw for them for minimum wage.
Right.
So what you do instead is you're almost like an assistant.
Mhm.
And when you're an assistant, you're just kind of doing a bunch of file work, organizing things, writing stuff down. So that's what I did as an intern. We had a little bit of art classes that we got to take there, but we weren't allowed to actually draw anything that was going to be used on the show for legal reasons.
Mm.
So that led me to becoming an actual production assistant at Cartoon Network for a few years, which is just, helping out around administrative stuff. And then after I was that for a couple of years, I rolled into being an actual storyboard artist.
So you worked for them as a storyboard artist for a little bit?
I actually never worked at Cartoon Network as a storyboard artist. I was only with
Okay.
them as an assistant. It's just
Mhm.
the way it worked out. My first job as a storyboard artist was with Apple TV, actually, for their Strange Planet show. So,
Oh.
yeah.
So give us now that you've experienced the storyboard process, what would be the process in which that comes to fruition? Like what kind of give us a little guideline from writer to storyboard artist and then back and forth type of ideal situation.
Sure. So the schedules are super fast in television. It's interesting because when it comes to movies, you'll hear people say, well, I got to storyboard this for 3 years. We did the scenes over and
Wow.
over again because they kept changing the script so many times and they have such a high budget that they can just do it over and over again. But with TV, it's like, okay, we don't have, the Frozen or the Moana budget, not nearly. So everything has to go faster, and there's a lot of disconnect between departments. So if I'm given a script on a television show, I never talk to the writers. I'm given the script and they're just like, interpret this, do 11 pages. Because sometimes if it's like a 22-minute production, it'll be two artists on it. We'll get like 11 minutes and 11 minutes. Or if it's just an 11-minute production, it'll just be one of us working on it. And what ends up happening is we're just kind of on our own and we just have to interpret what's given to us. And we kind of do a first pass. We'll kind of do a really rough sketch of what we interpret of the whole script. Then we turn that in, and there are directors that review that. And they give us notes of how, I don't think this scene should be like this. I think it should be more like this. So fix it. And they give it back. And it's usually like 3 or 4 times. And each time it gets more and more detailed. And then there's a final product, which we turn in. But sometimes there's rewrites, and then we're given another script, and we have to adjust it. But we never talk to the writers directly.
You say we, so if it's 2 artists, do your writing styles got to kind of gel together? Do they fit you, and you're working on the project together, even though you're both doing different 11-minute sections for this show? You know what I'm saying?
It's
Are you and the artists working together? The 2 artists, technically, would you be working together, or do you guys communicate?
We really don't work together that much. And if it's split in half, if we're doing a 22-minute and we each have an 11-minute section, the only time we communicate is if, okay, how do we hook up the point in which it's broken? Like, we get this half, right. I get this half, you get this half. We need to make it gel together right here in this little section. That's pretty much the only communication that we have because there's no time. And it's really not that relevant anyway, because if we're hired on the same show, we assume that we have like the same type of storytelling style anyway.
Okay.
So it kind of works out. We just have to make sure that broken section meshes and makes sense. So it's not like, well, how did they end up over here if Rachel ended her section here? So it's just hooking up what happened before.
Well, I'm also assuming, since this is fast paced, you're not have colored pencils and drawing on paper. You're using some kind of electronic medium like Photoshop or something. What is your process?
Yes. So as far as television animation goes, there is an actual computer program called Storyboard Pro, and that is the industry standard software for television to storyboard. It's interesting because I hear a lot of movies do use Photoshop, even though it's a bit harder to get that done. It's because it's not as intuitive to storyboard in Photoshop, but they do it anyway because they like it. But as far as the Storyboard Pro software goes, that is what I use. It's really nice. It's just the fastest thing for the type of schedule that we have.
It's interesting. So like, so this, from personal perspective, because this is one of the questions whenever, before you went to college, your dad kind of picked my brain because I went to CCAD as well. And
oh my gosh, how did I not know that? Oh my gosh.
I had a full ride.
Secrets being on. Oh my gosh, congratulations.
He draws a little bit.
Yeah, but I didn't stay. But this is where my question stems from, because listening to this podcast, you'll find out my brain was, so my art teacher and my mom made me apply to CCAD because my art teacher, she always wanted to have a student go. And I was never on my radar. And I really wanted to go work for the government and study aliens. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I
can relate to that too. I love aliens.
Yes. But my mom was insistent that I go to art school since I had a full ride. And so I went. But honestly, I am not the type of artist. I'm a tattoo artist now, but I'm not the type of artist that can sit there and just be told what to do. So for me, I have to find inspiration, and I have to be motivated to keep doing art. And I can't keep that motivation going. I'm so disconnected with doing the same thing all the time, linear wise. So how do you as an artist stay focused and motivated in your storyboard artwork?
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense, because if you talk to people in any art industry, especially animation, they'll say, well, I'm working on this preschool show. It's kind of doesn't have much nuance, as you can imagine. It's kind of doesn't have any depth. It's kind of driving me crazy because they're just, hanging out in their diapers or whatever. So normally what people do, seriously, that's how it is most of the time. But I'll hear from people, and I do this too. You just kind of have to make your own art outside of work to feel fulfilled. And I do that all the time. I'll just do an illustration to, feel better about everything. Or, I like developing, I haven't like actually published one yet because it's very difficult, but I like developing graphic novels because it's kind of like storyboarding with the whole, image and story aspect. It's, basically a comic book, but it's a graphic novel. I think it's a good outlet because nobody's telling me what to do. When you make a graphic novel, it's like, this is the story, take it or leave it, agent or publisher, this is what I want to tell. It's definitely a good outlet, especially when you're storyboarding and you literally just get told what to do and the showing. So that's how I handle it. At least.
We know a publisher.
But I was on my mind too. No publisher. But
I saw the brain working on Jamie, and my brain was working too. I'm like, if you ever decide to finish it.
Yes, I'd love to get into that.
Yes,
I actually have quite a few books. I wouldn't mind talking to you about making graphic novels. Age of the Sigil. Anyway, when you submit your art to whoever, and you say you might have to do revisions, we are artists, and I always even working with songwriters or authors. I tell them you can't be married to your work. If an editor or or producer's looking at it, they're gonna eat you up alive. You got to change this and that. And I've seen people like, I can't do that. I've spent 14 years writing this book. How do you handle the feedback or the revisions? Has there ever been a time like, I hate this guy, or has it been like, yeah, no problem?
Oh, trust me. I mean, you can't pick who's your superior on a show or a production. You just kind of have to deal with it, especially if the personalities don't mesh. It's just like, okay, deep breath. It's not personal. This is just how they envision it. They're the director. They have more power than me. I just got to accept it. This is my day job. I'm not writing this story. It's not mine. It's just that overall acceptance that you just have to internalize to deal with. And, it's not that big of a deal because when you're making storyboards, they're sketches. You're not like coloring it. You're not outlining it and making it super detailed. They're easily thrown away into the trash. So if they're like, this scene isn't working, throw it out. It's like, well, whatever. It was just sketches. I spent like 30 seconds on this panel. It's not a big of a deal. So,
right.
Which, it has to be harder.
Micro fast writer.
Yeah, but if I'm pitching, because I do have an illustration agent in publishing. Nothing has worked out yet, but I do have one. If I'm pitching a graphic novel idea to her and she's like, I don't think this is going to go over in publishing because this isn't really what they want right now. That's harder for me to accept because it's my own personal idea. So that's a little bit harder to, take. But I've definitely gotten better at it over the years. I'm used to rejection. That's part of being an artist and a writer. So, you know exactly how it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Indeed.
Yeah. So when you talk about your graphic novel, it's kind of reversed though, because you're your own director essentially. Yeah. And then it's a little different process. So when you've done all this stuff, and then you next hand it off, and once they've finalized the storyboard, they hand it off to the animator. Is that how it works?
Yeah, with animation, it's as soon as the storyboard is complete, then they ship it off. And a lot of television animation is done in other countries because it's cheaper. It's just cheaper for the production that way. So what happens is they take the storyboard, they time it out like in a video program so that it moves with the voices. And then they ship it off to wherever it's being animated, and the animators view that video of the storyboards moving, and they're like, okay, I get how the timing is supposed to go. I see what the scene is trying to do. Now I'm going to animate it.
Interesting.
Yes.
So what can you, I don't know if you can say this, the most exciting project you've worked on that you enjoyed?
Honestly, so far, it probably would be the Strange Planet show on Apple TV, which I don't know if you've ever seen the Strange Planet comics online, but it is based off of a popular comic strip that circulates Facebook and Instagram and all the social media. It's almost become like a meme over the years, but that's what it's based off of. It's a very comedy-based show about aliens acting like humans, but it's like funny because they have different words for things. It was exciting because I was a fan of that comic strip before I started working on it. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm familiar with this. I love aliens. This is perfect for me. It's comedic. Comedy comes really easy to me. So I thought it was exciting just because it meshed well with my type of style.
Well, that's interesting because if there's already a comic book, I guess for me, I didn't know that. There's already a comic book, you would think they would just kind of take the comic book and put it into play for the most part, not necessarily needing much of a storyboard, but I guess it would make sense that you would have to have a linear storyboard to kind of play it out.
Yeah, with Strange Planet in particular, it was more kind of like, Sunday comics, where it was just 4 panel, here's the punchline. There wasn't a story really with the original Strange Planet comics. So if we were going to adapt it for the screen, which is what it was, the show I was on, you have to come up with a story. So we did need writers and storyboard artists to give that world depth because it really didn't have depth before. It was just like, punchline, this is funny, aliens are acting weird. But now it's like, okay, the aliens, this is the town that they live in. This is the backstory. This is what they're doing. This is the overarching plot line of the season. There are reoccurring characters. They have character arcs. They change. There's a culminating event at the end of the season that brings everybody together and wraps up all the stories. And that did not exist at all in the comic strips. So definitely more depth with the show.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Have you faced any like major challenges with storyboard artwork? And if so, like what did you do to overcome it?
I don't know if I've had any major challenges with storyboarding. Honestly, it comes pretty naturally to me because I consider myself a fast artist to begin with. Like I love sketching. I love, drawing quickly. And that's a big part of the job is just, you have to be fast because there's no time and it's all about being sketchy and quick. More so, the challenge came from just breaking in to the job because it's very competitive. I mean, from publishing and every other type of creative job, it's just everybody wants to be a creative. So there's a ton of people in competition for you for that first entry level role. So a lot of my difficulties came from just proving myself and showing people that I was ready for the job and that I was capable. So once I got in, I'm like, I knew I could do it. Like, it was much more about like the challenge of getting to that point and showing people that, I was good. So.
Well, I work with rock stars. I know other vocal coaches. Storyboarding is new to me, but I'm kind of wondering if there's like, oh man, there's this storyboarder and they're on top and they're famous and they've influenced me.
Yeah.
So is there anybody in that area that you looked up to or who have influenced you? Some artist, some illustrator?
Yeah, is there a rock star in that world?
Yeah, is there a rock star storyboarder?
Really, I honestly don't think of anybody in particular because before I knew what storyboarding was, it was more so just looking at the shows as a whole because you didn't really know who was behind it. So more so my inspirations come from particular shows. And I know there were a ton of people behind it, but I just didn't know who they were. So, SpongeBob, huge, that was my childhood. I think it really like molded my comedic sensibilities. I'm still kind of using that type of style of comedy for my own stuff. Avatar: The Last Airbender, huge inspiration for emotion and character arcs and those type of dramatic storytelling sensibilities. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much stuff, and The Lion King, huge. I mean, I watched it constantly when I was a kid, so it's more so just individual projects rather than storyboard people.
I'm kind of curious now. Like they roll the credits at the end, and they're 15 minutes long. Is storyboarder listed as one of the credits? Because now I'm gonna be looking. And I'll be like, "There's that rock star that I was talking about."
Yes,
that's green.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, everybody is credited for their work, which is excellent. You want to have that recognition for what you've done. And usually storyboard people are pretty high up right after the writers because, we were kind of the blueprint. So if you're watching a credit roll by, you'll see the storyboard people if you pay attention pretty quickly because we were one of the first people in the process. So.
That's
that
cool.
would make sense. That would make sense because if you don't have a good storyboard artist and designer, it's gonna not translate well. If you're not talking to the writer, then I'm assuming the animators are not talking to the writers as well. It's kind of like because you're that middle person, there's just like that complete disconnect.
Yeah, I think sometimes I've never been a director yet. That's kind of the goal in the future, but the directors, I think, kind of have a little bit of communication with the writers to just kind of understand what we're going for. And then the directors sometimes communicate that to us. But more than anything, we just get the script and we interpret it. If we make a mistake, then we're told in the reviews and then we fix it. There's just not enough time for like, hanging out in a room and picking the writer's brain because that's just how the schedule goes with these studios. They don't give much time.
Okay, so a squirrel just went by. That's my ADHD. Where do you live?
I live in Los Angeles,
Okay.
which is the hub. It is the hub for entertainment. It is the hub for the animation industry. I live in Burbank, California, to be
Yeah.
particular. It is kind of like a suburban area within the county, and all of the studios are in this town.
Yeah,
So,
spent much time. I lived on right behind Man's Chinese Theater for a while
oh,
back in
cool.
the early '90s. I attended Musicians Institute, so yes,
Nice.
I know the area. Hung out in Burbank quite a bit.
I've only been to
Cool.
LA
Well,
once.
well, it's pretty good, just very expensive. So that's kind of the only thing when it comes to LA. But with animation jobs, like I said, the schedule is very fast. It's crazy. So usually our storyboard jobs only last about a year or so, and then we got to find another one. But
Oh.
thankfully, yes. So, all
Hmm.
the animation artists in the industry were a part of a union called the Animation Guild. And all
Hmm.
of the studios in Los Angeles are members of the Animation Guild. So if we switch studios, which we always are after about a year or so, we have a set rate at every studio per the Animation Guild. So it's very easy to find another job because it's a part of the union and, they know all the artists. So we just kind of switch around all the time.
It's like you read my mind because I was thinking there's got to be something like the Actors Guild to assure
Yes.
if you're jumping from job to job to keep you, to keep the rate even, and so that's cool.
Yeah, the rate and insurance benefits, it's all connected. So if we're switching to another studio, the same stuff rolls over. It's very
That's good.
easy. Yes. Yes.
Why do they switch? Now I'm curious why you switch so often because I personally would think I work really well with this storyboard artist communicating what I want. Like they always seem to get what I need. I would think I would want to be able to keep that person longer if it's a long running
Well,
show.
yeah, that's a good point. And what's interesting is like, if there's no projects immediately available at the studio right after that show ends, you're kind of out of luck. But what people do is they switch around all the time. So if I have a director or a superior above me that really likes me, oftentimes they'll take me to another studio for another project. So it's
Oh,
more
okay.
so loyalty to people rather than studios, just because we never know what studio has what projects at what time because
Hmm.
it's just constantly changing. We don't know what's in production. So it's more so these are my people, like networking. They know
Hmm.
me. So I'm probably going to go with them over here to this next
Oh,
studio, this
yeah.
next
That's
project.
that's what I would think because I like networking and Jamie and I are both kind of we have, people that we like to work with specifically in the publishing industry who are in our circle and with our editor and our interior layouts, our covers and stuff like that. The same with his vocal world and like he has certain people who does things for him. So yeah, you have your group of people that work well with you and I think that's a huge thing and it's not like playing favoritism. It's like who sees my vision.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of it's just about, okay, this person's reliable. I know that we mesh well. They do good work. So why would I just look for somebody new when I know this person's available and what they're capable of? So that's usually how it works. Sometimes, I get a job from applying regularly. It does work
Mhm.
that way, but more often than not, it's who you know and if they want to take you to their next project.
So, next question outside of being like the storyboard designer artist, illustration in general, have you ever thought about I know you said you've got a graphic novel that you've been working on, but have you ever just thought of illustrating someone's book as far as if they had a children's book or something along that line? Have you thought about doing that before?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about doing that, and I do have the illustration agent, but I haven't had anything come my way just yet through her. I think it's also very competitive. She has a lot of illustrators under her agency. Yeah, I don't know why it hasn't worked out yet. That's just the way of the business, I suppose. Or, nobody's come to me specifically, like an individual person, to have me
So
illustrate
if
their
someone
book
came to you
yet.
individually, do you have to go through your agent, or how does that work? Because what if someone's
You're
like,
reading
"Hey,
my mind.
I know, right?" I'm
I
like,
think I think they would. Yes, I think that's in our contract, but she would be more than willing to accept, of course, because she gets a little cut
Of
if
course.
we make
yeah,
that if we make that deal. So yes, I believe that's how it works.
interesting.
This is all very
Because
new to me. I've only been with
yes,
her for
well,
about a year.
we are a hybrid publishing system. We're not a traditional, so we are kind of a blend between traditional and self-publishing because we have a few art authors that are technically we're their avenue for self-publishing. They maintain a lot of control of their work. We just take a small portion, just to help them, navigate the system and do that part for them. But then we have people that we take a little bigger because we're doing everything for them and whatever. But we don't usually work with agents, so that's a world we're not familiar with as far as working with an agent. We know what agents are. We know what agents' purposes are. We've done episodes and talked about that, but that's just not how our publishing company works.
Yeah, I'm very new to it as well. I've only been with her for about a year. And then, I had my wedding and everything last year. So it's kind of all been on hold. I haven't done much work there yet, but I'm really hoping to delve deeper into it like later this year. So I'm definitely new too. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know much
So
about
how
it.
did that come about? What was that process? Can you share that experience and process with finding the agent? What led you to that? Like that, what happened there?
So it's funny. It was all very simple because I was simply recommended by one of my friends in animation who had her as an illustration agent for his own graphic novel. And I
Hmm.
was talking to him and I said, I would love to do this too. This has kind of been a dream of mine to do my own stories, my own illustrations with graphic novels. And he's like, okay, I'll just recommend you to her. And he did. And we kind of had a little interview chat session and I signed with her. So it was super easy, like no crazy, avenue of getting to that. It was just a recommendation from a friend who also had her as an agent.
And so, okay, and so as far as that goes, now you've signed with her. What are your restrictions with her? Does she send you work, or do you send her work? Like, how does that work? Explain me the process of her purpose to you in your
Yeah,
stuff.
so it kind of works both ways because like technically I am open to like illustrating children's books or books covers or anything like that, but I haven't been sent anything yet. I've been hearing that publishing has been kind of bad lately in that regard anyway. She hasn't sent me anything yet, but I also sent her my own ideas for graphic novels and things like that. All my ideas I have sent her hasn't really come to fruition either because publishing is very specific with graphic novels as well. They love
Mhm.
contemporary stories. I love fantasy stories. So it's kind of like a conflict there between me and what publishing wants. So, been sending ideas, been workshopping. Nothing's really stuck yet in terms of, submitting to publishers.
Right. Interesting. Well, this is all
Definitely
very exciting.
yeah, less interesting than my storyboard career. Not really lucrative yet.
Right. Right.
Oh, I know something that's interesting. So, how'd you meet your husband? Is he an illustrator?
Hmm.
Is he
Oh
from
no, he
LA?
is
Is he from
not.
Jackson?
No, he's from Jackson.
He's from Jackson. Yes. Jamie's like, is everyone from Jackson? What is this?
I'm
Um,
telling you,
I cut his aunt's hair.
I went all
oh,
the way out
nice.
to LA, and I had to come back home to find me a husband. Now,
Yeah.
No, yeah,
you're like, these people are
my,
weird. I live there. I understand.
right. My husband Brogan is from Jackson. He got a master's in library science, so he's kind of creative a little bit. He loves writing too because he likes library stuff. But he followed me to LA because I had to move out here for animation, and now he technically works in animation himself. He works at the Disney Animation Research Library as a
Oh.
data asset specialist. So yeah, super cool. It just kind of happened. So it
Is
worked
he
out that
writing
way for
anything?
us.
Is he writing anything? Like, what? I mean, do you guys like ever think about doing a project together?
We have. He's really good at world building more so than, dialogue and characters. So if I have an idea, I'm like, Brogan, make this world make sense. And he does. And I'm like, I never thought of that. So we do like to collaborate. I think it's fun.
Interesting, interesting. I think we have some questions for you later that we will do off recording.
All right.
So,
Go for it.
technology is always changing, and we'll probably get into AI here in a minute. But I did I didn't do a music video. I wrote the song with my partner, and he was playing around. Is it called Unreal Engine? I believe there's a program out
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and he spent months and months and months doing this little 3-minute video. I'm like, Lord, it's been 3 or 4 years ago. And now he's like, everything's turned around. And he said, what took me, 26 hours to render, I can render in 30 minutes. So the way
Yeah.
everything's changing, I know you said there's a specific program that you use for storyboarding, but is there anything new, any kind of tools in illustration that you're kind of exploring or interested in learning?
Not particularly,
Well,
just
shot
for
that long question
storyboarding.
down, but
Yeah. Well,
20 minutes to get there.
hey, we'll talk about AI in a second because it is a thing. It's a problem with the animation guild right now. We'll get to that.
yep.
But as far as me, myself, and I goes, I just use Storyboard Pro for storyboarding, and then usually for my own illustrations, I like to use Procreate on my iPad.
Yep.
Because if you're on your iPad, you can draw from anywhere, the bed, the couch. I really wish they'd put Storyboard Pro on the iPad, then I could finally do it in bed and not move, but they haven't done it yet.
You're Apple.
I can't even believe Procreate. I remember years ago, I was trying to get a friend of mine who was an artist to draw pictures for my first book, Raise Your Voice. And I had found this little tablet that you could plug into your PC and you could draw. I bought it for him and everything. He just could not get the handle of it. I got to draw on paper. I'm like, no, I don't want to take a picture of that. Draw it on the computer. So this has been 15, 18 years ago, something like that. And now just grab your iPad, your iPhone, and you're done.
Yeah, I use Procreate for my tattoo.
This is what I use to draw on the computer. I just unplugged it for you guys.
Wow.
It's you draw on the screen when it's plugged in, it turns on. That's what I use for my computer. And it's funny that you mentioned that little tablet that you plug in, because I did use that when I was younger.
Do you remember? And it wasn't. I mean, you'd have to look up at your screen as you're drawing to see.
It was a big disconnect. It was a disconnect between your brain and your hand, and you had to train yourself how to do it. And it wasn't very fun. The screen technology they've made since then is so much better. Like it's awesome. It's like drawing on paper if you train hard enough.
So
now,
what are your thoughts on AI?
Okay.
How much time we have?
I think great. No, it's okay. I think AI is amazing as a tool. Like, for example, Photoshop has been adding a few AI tools. For example, there's one called like generative fill, where, if you want to make a pattern in Photoshop and you're like, I'm having a really hard time making this a seamless pattern that connects to put on something, you can click that new generative fill AI tool that Photoshop implemented, makes it seamless. Love that. Because I drew it. It's just using AI to connect it, But a lot of AI, it's the way that AI works is it takes artwork that already exists from other artists from a database and just smashes it all together to make this abomination of something that was not made by a human, just this crazy thing with four hands, 2 noses, weird eyes, and it's just it's not made by a human. It's soulless. It's something made up, and people in the animation guild are really worried because they're like, oh my gosh, this would save so much money. It could eliminate jobs. But thankfully, all it can do right now is concept art, essentially. It can't animate. It can't do a narrative that makes sense. So all of those jobs are safe for now. But I will say illustrators and concept artists are worried because it would save a lot of money if it was implemented rather than them to draw.
Yeah, I got ChatGPT and they have was it DAL-E? They got you can play, and I played around with it, and it like a year ago, everyone was crazy about this, and you see all these pictures, I'm like, and I was like, bleh, because it all looks the same. It has that look to it, and I'm like,
yes, it does.
I can't seem to go in this route. Even with writing, we're on the fence. I think it's fine for a tool. If I'm talking with Carissa, I'm like, man, I'm writing this. I'm kind of stuck. I could ask ChatGPT to spit out some ideas. I would not let it write a book for me, but I would go through and be like,
I've done that too. I was doing my own. Sometimes I do my own little personal storyboards for my portfolio. I couldn't think of something recently. I'm like, what would if I was doing a board about fairies, and I'm like, what would a fairy use for this? And I asked GPT that, and it's like, oh, here's some ideas, and I'm like, oh, cool. I would never thought of that. Let me take that and kind of change it or whatever. I don't see any problem with that if it's just
Yeah.
brainstorming. But actually doing the work of a creative who actually has a working brain and can make sense of narrative and art, like, it just doesn't work, in my opinion. It takes the soul and the logic out of
Agreed.
I feel the
everything.
same way. I have a friend who will use it. He's very good at really explaining, like, I want this, that, in this chapter, and it'll kind of fill it in, and he'll go in, and he'll re-edit it. But I've done that with our editor Rich Dalglish for Order of Five, the third book, and I plotted out everything I wanted for every chapter, and said, "Here's the bullet points. You write it. I don't have time." I don't think I could let Chat GPT really do that for me. I've got to be involved. There's some soul there, but I would be happy to spit out what my idea is and see what it comes up with and be like, oh, I like that idea and that idea out of 10, so I'll use those two.
Well, we did an episode on AI, and after that we had told the listeners that we were going to experiment with it and come back, and I have experimented with it since then as far as just playing around, because I use Grammarly, and Grammarly has a great system with it. However, I've stated that, as you did, it is soulless in a sense that it cannot inspire emotion. It cannot create an emotion. So if you're like, I really want it dark and da 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 da. So I'm like, okay, let's try this. Let's see what it does. So I'm like, I had this chapter written out how I wanted already, but I was stuck on a paragraph, and I'm like, I can't get this transitional thing. So I'm like, I wonder what AI would suggest. So I put in there, this is what's going on in the chapter. Here's what I want to do. How do I end this chapter this way? And it spit out this thing, and I'm like, this is so boring. It's just it's very one dimensional
Generic.
when it comes to emotion, and putting it like creates conversation, but it doesn't. It's like, if you're wanting just the basics, that's fine. It's there if you're just wanting to throw something on the page, but did not create any emotion. Yeah. Yeah. So it's very good for nonfiction writing.
I agree with you.
When you're trying to inspire. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's definitely a great tool.
Unfortunately, that's where plagiarism comes in, because I haven't dealt with this directly, but my mom being a teacher and hearing things from others online, it's like, once again, it's kind of the same thing, how it takes from a database of illustrators. It's also taking a database of everything ever written on the internet, and you don't know what it's plagiarizing. You don't know what it's taking from. So
actually you do, because I sent Jamie a link. Yeah, you do now. So, and I'm not sure, I can send you a link. You can send to your mom. There is a way to check. And I have several teachers and principals that I've spoke to about this, and college professors. We've had a college professor on here. Even Arizona State University, where I go, they have a system that they can plug it in and see, one, how long did it take you to write it?
Okay.
Also, is this something that matches things on? There's an algorithm now to scrub and see if it's AI generated, if it has a high probability that this was not created by the author. So they do have ways to do that now.
Okay,
because
interesting.
it is. Yeah, because it can literally do a playback now, and I sent Jamie this link, and like I said, I'll send it to you, where you can go in, plug the information in that they sent you, and see how long it took them to write that file.
Okay, that's super helpful.
Mm-hmm,
wow, that changes the game a little bit.
Yeah, because there was a teacher. Yeah, there was a teacher that's just like, I don't think this person did. I'm going to plug this in there, and they did. Like, oh, look, you can literally see the person typing out the words in a certain time fashion, and deleting and going back. Yeah, so that's kind of cool because it has a playback.
Great.
So a lot of universities are doing that as well. It's almost like, going in and checking plagiarism. They can go in and check to see the AI. And then also, Jamie and I realize, with when we load books now, when we load books into Ingram or even into Amazon, it will ask you, did you use AI? And if you say no, and you put it in there, it will scrub your book and see if you did, and it'll kick it back if there's any kind of like, you have to prove that you didn't use AI.
Wow, so that's great. Happy to hear that.
Well, and I'm sure they're going to apply that to artwork, because if you, like you said, they're grabbing from this database, and everyone, if it's legitimately tied to you, I'm sure there's a way for you to do that when you submit a new piece of art online, that they've got to find, wait a minute, it's too similar to this artist. Oh, they've pulled from that, so that's not their original artwork.
It's gotten to the point, it's gotten to the point where people can tell. Like if somebody's a really big artist online and we see
Mm-hmm.
an AI generated piece, we're like, that is literally artist so and so. I can tell
Mm-hmm.
from the nose and the eye, but it looks like an abomination version of that, style. I can tell where this came from, but they made it into this mushy, blobby thing. So there is issues with that as well, with the plagiarism for illustration. So something needs to be done law-wise or something. I don't want it to get out of hand. It's already kind of crazy where it's headed. So
yeah. All right. Well, I'm see we're all on the same page with that. So
yes, excellent.
Yeah. This has been a great episode. I'm so glad that we were able to record this with you and that we're able to work this out, because I feel like this is going to be a pretty good episode. So
great. I'm glad you think so. It was fun.
Yes. Now I'm going to sign off, but I want you to stick on for just a couple minutes because I'm going to talk to you after this. But for those who are listening, we appreciate you listening. And if you want to find us, you can always go to www.alwaysrightpodcast.com and you can click on those little icons that we have there and you can go to all of our listening platforms. Oh my gosh, Jamie. Gotta throw you.
That's what I need.
You're doing so good.
I drink like 2 gallons a day.
Yes. You can click on the icons. You can find out where to follow us on social media. You can also find out where you can listen to us. Oh my gosh. Never a dull moment. If you want to make comments or tell Jamie to put his water bottle down, please email us at alwaysrightpodcast@gmail.com. And thank you, Rachel, for joining us. And I am signing off. I am author Carissa DeLay, and
I am water drinker Jamie Vendera, and we shall see you in the next podcast.
Thanks for listening, and always right.